The Battle of Dunkirk. At the start of the war, Germany invaded France using its new blitzkrieg tactic, fast attacks with tanks, planes, and infantry moving together. In just weeks, German forces pushed the British and French armies back to the coast, to the town of Dunkirk. Around 400,000 Allied soldiers were trapped with the sea behind them and German tanks closing in. It looked like total disaster. Then, something amazing happened. Britain launched Operation Dynamo, a huge rescue mission. Over 900 boats, including warships, fishing boats, and even small private yachts, crossed the English Channel. In 9 days, they rescued 338,000 soldiers. But they had to leave behind almost 40,000 who were captured. Britain lost hundreds of planes, and many soldiers died during bombings, but this miracle of Dunkirk gave hope to the Allied forces. It showed that even in defeat, courage could win the day. The Battle of Britain. After Dunkirk, Hitler wanted to invade Britain. But first, he needed control of the sky. So the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, began a massive bombing campaign. Over 2,500 German planes faced about 1,900 British fighters from the Royal Air Force. Every day, dogfights filled the sky over England. The Germans dropped bombs on airfields, factories, and cities, especially London, during what became known as the Blitz. By the end of the battle, Britain had lost around 1,000 planes and 500 pilots, but Germany lost over 1,800 planes and thousands of aircrew. The result? Hitler gave up his plan to invade Britain. It was Germany's first major defeat, and Britain's survival meant the Allies still had a base to fight from. The Battle of Stalingrad. Now we move to the east, to the Soviet Union. Hitler wanted to capture Stalingrad, a big industrial city and a symbol of Soviet pride. If he could take it, he would control the oil fields of the south and cut off Soviet transport lines. The battle lasted 6 months, through summer, autumn, and a freezing winter. Over 2 million soldiers fought here, 1 million Germans and their allies, and 1.1 million Soviets. The fighting was brutal, close-quarters combat in ruined buildings, streets full of rubble, and constant bombing. The Soviets refused to surrender. Then, in November 1942, they surrounded the German Sixth Army. By February 1943, 91,000 German soldiers surrendered, out of more than 300,000 who had started. Most never returned home. In total, around 2 million people were killed or wounded on both sides. It was the deadliest battle in human history and a turning point in the war. After Stalingrad, the Soviets began pushing west, toward Germany. The Battle of Midway. While Europe was burning, a different war was happening in the Pacific. Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor in 1941, and now controlled much of the Pacific Ocean. But America was ready to fight back. At Midway Island, Japan planned to trap the U.S. Navy. But American intelligence had broken Japan's secret codes and knew exactly when and where they would strike. When Japan attacked, the U.S. was waiting. In just 3 days of fighting, the Americans sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. Japan lost around 3,000 men, while the US lost about 300. This was a huge turning point. Japan's navy never recovered from this defeat, and from then on, the United States went on the offensive, moving island by island toward Japan. D-Day, the Normandy invasion. By 1944, the Allies were ready to take back Western Europe from Nazi Germany. They planned a massive invasion of France, known as D-Day, or Operation Overlord. On June 6, more than 156,000 Allied soldiers from the US, Britain, and Canada crossed the English Channel. They landed on 5 beaches: Omaha, Utah, Gold, Juneau, and Sword. It was the largest seaborne invasion in history, involving 7,000 ships and landing craft, 11,000 aircraft, and 23,000 paratroopers dropped behind enemy lines. The fighting was intense, especially on Omaha Beach, where U.S. troops faced heavy German machine guns and artillery. By the end of the day, the Allies had suffered around 10,000 casualties, but they held the beaches. D-Day was a success. It opened a new front in Western Europe, allowing the Allies to march toward Paris, and eventually Berlin. The Battle of Berlin. By early 1945, Germany was collapsing. The Soviets were closing in from the east with 2.5 million soldiers, and the Western Allies from the west. Berlin, the capital, became the last battleground. The Battle of Berlin was a city fight, street to street, building to building. The Soviets used over 6,000 tanks and 7,500 aircraft. The Germans had only around 1 million defenders, including old men and young boys forced to fight. In just 2 weeks, Berlin was destroyed. Around 80,000 Soviet soldiers and 100,000 German soldiers died. Civilians also suffered terribly, with tens of thousands killed. On April 30, 1945, Hitler took his own life in his bunker. Just days later, Germany surrendered. On May 8, 1945, Europe celebrated victory in Europe Day. The war in Europe was finally over.